Let's look at innovation as a process. Start by thinking of it as a series of steps, and people play roles in that process. A process can be systematically modeled. So if, for example, you have talent at drawing, you might not have noticed what the systematic modeling got you. But if you didn't come into the process, even in elementary school with talent, and somebody pointed out, oh, the eyes are halfway down the face, so if you draw them, if you kind of measure and draw them in the middle, your face is going to look more like an actual face. And you can measure, and of course the nose goes in the middle. And so once you learn what those rules are, even if you didn't come into this with natural talent, you're going to be able to do a better job. Singing, same thing. If you have natural musical talent, but especially if you don't, there are things that you learn to do and work on that somebody with talent might not have thought to tell you were part of the process, and that can make you better at what you do. Even just you elongate vowels, that'll make your songs sound better. Pretend that everything you're singing is essentially Italian, even though it's not. Those are tricks, and you may not have needed the tricks if you came in with a kind of talent, but that modeling enhances your experience and makes you better at it. In sports in particular, there are lots of procedures to go through in order to make sure that you optimize and get better at your particular sport, at your level of fitness, at your reactions, and so on. The process produces results and effects. So innovation has been looked at from the perspective of lots of disciplines with different views of process, and that really broadens how you can think about what that perspective gives you. So there are really four basic innovation processes that we'll look at. So innovation as new product development, new technology, a kind of management improvement, or a service improvement. And these can be viewed from the lens of a set of common steps for really almost any form of innovation. For products, you'll see strategic planning and discovering the opportunity. You need to allocate some kinds of resources behind that innovation. You'll see that this is an iterative process. You generate a product concept. What is this? What's it going to do? Test its technical feasibility in whatever narrow context you can start with. Develop, again, and iteratively refine that product. Prepare it for manufacture, and then for full-scale scale-up of manufactured production of that. Positioning that product in the marketplace. So for whom does it solve? How big a problem? And then support problem solving and improvement as it evolves and matures. A new product and process. Let's look at examples of new consumer products, maybe that have come into the marketplace within the last year. Imagine the path that those products took in order to get to the marketplace. What was the effect of their materials or their manufacture on the innovation process? In particular, in the current context, consider the supply chain. What was the effect of flexible sourcing on the innovation? So a big company, even last decade, would have said, we never source from only one place. We always need to have a backup way to get the materials, the products, the components that feed into our product. As the supply chain gets more complex, and as its challenges rise, the importance of that kind of flexibility can have a tremendous effect on what reaches the marketplace and what wins in the marketplace. For the new technology path, you want to be able to recognize a breakthrough technology, not or recognize the user need. You always need to pay attention to the user. Always. The user's need is critical here, because otherwise you're just making something that nobody wants and that nobody needs. So you formulate an application idea, resolve any technological problems that are in your way, and that enables you to begin to translate the idea into a solution that, again, you iteratively develop and refine so that you can see that solution adopted by users. A perennial startup mistake is to create a technology in search of a problem. It's important to ask yourself that question at every stage if you are creating a technology and a company. We're solving what problem for whom? Not, oh, this is so cool. Because just because it's fun doesn't mean that it solves a problem for somebody enough for them to stop what they're doing, spend their time and money, and do it your way. So the new technology and process, let's look at how these technologies could have come into the marketplace and how these technology breakthroughs were enabled. Where did the technology originate, and how have breakthroughs really come to shape this process? So if you look at, for example, drug delivery in lipid nanoparticles, it's important to protect a fragile molecule or from deterioration or from exposure. And so the delivery of, say, mRNA vaccine encased in lipid nanoparticles, but also other things delivered that way too, essentially suspended in a little protective globule of fat, means that you don't have to worry about breakdown of something fragile as it gets delivered. When it was important to figure out what the right design was for nasal swabs for the initial round of coronavirus testing, 3D printing was great for prototyping in small batches and saying, well, what if it was ridged at the end, and does it have to be this long, and how flexible should it be? And each batch took less than an hour to figure out, because that's one of the advantages of digital manufacturing. You just change the file, change the print material specifications, and you've got a new design to test. So you can do your A/B testing really quickly in that way. When nobody really wanted to interact with cashiers or with anybody for any reason, Delivery innovations changed. Checkout innovations were important. Drones could play a bigger role. Little robots that go down the sidewalk and could deliver food had a brief moment. Electric vehicles, of course, are an important way to reduce emissions. And then self-driving has had a zigzag path. But it might be that the right solution there is to figure out what goes slowly enough in constrained enough environments and is otherwise expensive to staff, and choose that as the right initial spot for self-driving. So, maybe it's the shuttle bus that gets from the remote parking lot at the airport to the terminal that is really the best place to test a self-driving vehicle, because it really doesn't need to do very much. It needs not to crash into people or cars, but it runs slowly over the same terrain, some of it not even public roads. So those, you might want to be able to constrain and figure out what the right spot is for those new technologies in order to make them turn into useful innovations in the marketplace. Management practices take roughly the same path. So recognizing the needs and opportunities here within the organizational environment, generating an idea for addressing that need, iteratively testing and refining the idea for feasibility, acceptability, and convincing the users, here their employees in general, about the value of the idea and overcoming their resistance so that you can get that innovation adopted. So look at examples of management process innovations that you've experienced as an employee or manager, and think about what internal forces triggered the need to make that management improvement. Were people angry? Were people quitting? Did things take too much time? Did things pile up in one place and not move to the next, shutting down the entire operation? How did other employees influence the firm's intention to make a management innovation? In the best firms, those innovations will float up, not just come from the top, but listening to the employees who are on the ground and actually seeing where changes will make their work function better, and that percolates up so that the entire enterprise will work better. But a good company listens to ideas for innovation no matter where they come from. Service innovation, so you look at discovery or recognition of an operational problem or some kind of inefficiency and generate alternative solution approaches. Again, iteratively testing for potential feasibility, customer acceptance, getting buy-in from employees and customers, and then implementing the service innovation. So here, think about not only the taxi-killing innovations of Lyft and Uber, but also the fact that it removes the interaction of do I pay, do I tip from sitting in the vehicle. So it's all already taken care of and separated from the ride itself. So the process of magically a vehicle arrives, gets me where I'm going with tracking information, and then the pay part of it is now seamless in a new kind of way. And you're seeing that seamless, I'm already logged into my account, I don't have to give my credit card, it already knows it. Changes people's spending habits. Even having Amazon Prime seems to have an influence on how much people actually order from Amazon, because that is smoothed in a new kind of way. So consider examples of service innovations and what forces triggered the need, and then the influence of users or customers on the firm's innovation process. So in general, most innovation processes can be framed in a pattern of steps, and those patterns really align pretty cleanly. And by analyzing the sequence and pattern of known innovations, you can construct a process template that enables you to manage a novel innovation.